Hello, beloved. I'm Monica Bermudez. Welcome back to my podcast and another episode. In this episode, I do want to focus on processing of grief during the Ascension times. And I want to share three keys to help process along with some of these new energies, because the new energies are very intense. So it may actually make us even more sensitive and more consciously aware. And so that is, so key as well, because the sensitivities is a big superpower of ours. And I do share more about this in an earlier episode on my podcast. But with these new energies, there is, tremendous amount of change, and that includes different kind of losses. And there's all kinds of losses, right? There's the loss of loved ones that can trigger grief in us, and also loss of and the loss of loved ones that includes pets as well, and also anything related to financial loss, anything related to work, um, any abrupt changes, that cause major shock in our body. And all of that, is a form of grief. And so what it does is that it could end up closing our hearts and making us more susceptible to depression. So, which is why I want to share this message. And I feel so important because now that we're in 2024, the beginning of it, and we're moving into some really fast, accelerated times of new energies, meaning new ascension for a more expansive self. And the more that we're expanding, of course, there is still the human side of us where we mourn, we grieve, and it's all normal to feel this. From my own personal experience, when I went through the divorce, that was a big loss for me. Having relationship breakup is another form of loss. And I went through a period of time of grief. And then, from there, my cat passed away, and and after that, I had a family member pass away unexpectedly who I was close to as well, a cousin of mine's. And all of that kept piling up and piling up. And it was just like a nonstop layer of grief. um, this was like many years back, and I felt that I was going through this super accelerated path of this greater awakening within my own heart. Because a lot of times in grief, it feels like it is like our heart is breaking. And so it feels like our heart is breaking, but it really isn't, it's just the energy of it. And what's really um happening though with our heart, that it is having a super breakthrough of greater awakening, which is what led me into much deeper heart awakenings and a lot of the sacredness of the heart when I went in deeper and deeper into this grief of things that were piling up. So it was just more of this expansive energy within my own heart that I was feeling, the deeper that I was, all these things that kept coming up. So, there is a reason for those things to happen, and I do feel it is a part of a greater awakening within ourselves, because our heart is a big gateway to our soul, and our soul knows everything about our life in this lifetime, all the lessons that we come to learn, and as well all the things that we come to fulfill in the time frame that we are in this human body in this lifetime. So that is, what's really happening with a lot of this grief. So it takes, process to grieve, right? In the meantime, though, is not a very pleasant feeling. It's very painful. And, that is also part of the cycles of life, right? That there is this whole death and rebirth, because in every loss, there is some form of death and rebirth. So what dies is an old version of something, right? And I'm talking about a job. Like, for example, a job, right? If it goes away, that's the death of that job and how we identified ourselves with that job. And in a relationship, the same thing. That is a death of that relationship and how we identified ourselves within that relationship and the person that we were with. And so, in a way, this is all peeling away different layers of our own identity through a different type of death, which leads to a rebirth. And when someone passes away, a loved one, it is merely a transitional state of their physical form into another different energetic form in another location, wherever they're being called, and the soul goes on. And I do remember when my grandmother passed away, right, as an example, that um, everybody was sad, of course, and she was very much loved. And I remember that my uncle once dreamt with her, and in the dream, she kept saying to him, um, I'm alive, I'm still alive. And so, and the truth is, she's still alive. It's just a matter of just being transitioning from that physical body. But she was still very much alive, so that's true. And also, I would also have dreams with my grandmother, and we would have these really deep conversations. And I felt that, her presence was still there and is still around. I feel that she is part of my ancestry, as part of, the guides within the ancestry of the family. And so when she first passed away, I would have these very deep dreams with her. And in those dreams, I would have these big conversations with her as if she was still in the physical form. But, obviously um, she had passed on. And so in dreams, though, we often sometimes, connect with our loved ones that way. That includes our pets as well. I would have a lot of dreams with my cat, of course. But these are, some of the examples, right? A lot of this is all transitional state. So what we may say for now is, see you later. And in fact, in a lot of ancient civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, it was so known when a person was about to transition or to leave their physical body. And so this was a normal practice to, in a way, just do like a ceremonial event to wish them well on their next journey. And if you look at the different cultures right now, right, like the indigenous, for example, they often talk about the soul going on a journey. So they do similar practices to the way the ancient civilizations did as well. And I feel like a lot of that is also coming back in that awareness, because the more consciously expansive we're becoming now with these new energies and more aware, that all of that, those teachings are coming back to the surface, what has already been a part of our remembrance within our soul. And it's all within the soul that has that remembrance. So when we connect more with our own heart and get past our own grief, that we're able to tap into that wisdom, into that knowledge. And even now, like there are some preserved, teachings that go back from ancient teachings that come from the many star systems as well. And one of them, for example, is the Kybalion, which is Hermetic philosophy, which is based off of the Egyptian god Thoth. But within the Kybalion, they call him Hermes Trismegistus, which means 3 times the great Hermes, in Greek, he was also known as Hermes, which is a divine messenger. And it talks about these seven major principles, and they're really associated to universal laws. And one of those big principles is the principle of rhythm. And the principle of rhythm talks about the different cycles and how that is part of the universal flow of things. It's a cycle of things. And I'll just read a short excerpt from the Kybalion for the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates the Kybalion. So what it's saying is that it has to do with the cycles of life. And I did write a short message on my Instagram, my social media, where I was talking about how when we go to sleep and wake up, that is like a form of cycle of death and rebirth. It is a death of our past self, a death of, the previous version from the previous day. And it is a rebirth. And the next day when we wake up, it's a rebirth, it's a renewal of a new version of ourselves. So a new version of ourselves to create something new for that day. So living each day at our best, right? So that, is very important to take away from that as part of the universal laws of change, because change is a cycle and it's all rhythmic, and the universe is made of its own rhythm. And so when we flow with that rhythm of that energy, which I do feel that with these new energies of ascension, they are becoming more of this flow of this rhythmic state. And when the way to feel that the most is through our heart. So I want to share three very important keys to take away as far as, processing grief. If you find yourself with a lot of loss and going through a lot right now, and it's really hard to process, right? It's just too painful. So this will help alleviate some of that pain because you don't need to suffer in that moment and feeling that. And these are things that I did for myself when I was going through all this pile of grief of everything that I was feeling, and not a very pleasant state. So, number one, and this is my most favorite, and I still use this one technique all the time, especially when I feel a bit down, is the smell of a rose. And it could be the rose fragrance, right? Rose perfume or essential oil or incense. And it just, rose has a very special element or a special part of it that is meant to heal hearts. And so the fragrance of it does uplift you. It's a very important, like a very potent chemical for um to uplift moods. Um, and so just the smell of it, and just feeling that and just talking about it actually makes me really lightens me up. And it is just something so pure, so magical about roses that I just love. And I love to be surrounded by roses as well. And I do, from time to time purchase roses for myself just to have in the house because flowers do also bring in a lot of their energy in a home. And it also brings in the magic of the fairies as well. And so they serve their purpose in this way. And, always giving gratitude and blessings to them as well for their service in this way to provide us the support that we need. So that is my top number one thing to use is the rose. And it really just, if you just grab, a rose and just go smell it and just feel how that feels in your heart, and you'll notice a big difference for sure. So just, do it when you get a chance to find a rose or get a rose fragrance. Just set the intention of it, healing your own heart, and take a nice big smell and breathe it in within your heart. And the number two thing is connecting with nature or nature connection. And this is one of those things that I did a lot of. Every weekend, I would go for really long hikes. And that definitely helped clear up a lot of my energy field. And if I was feeling down, it certainly brought my energy back up in a very cheerful and very joyful way. So definitely connecting with trees and nature and just walking out, getting fresh air is a great way to get yourself uplifted. Now, for the final one, number three, this one in particular is to connect with Archangel Metatron. And so when I was going through my own grief process, I did a lot of connection with the angels. And in particular, I, suggest Archangel Metatron because um, Archangel Metatron is like a rainbow bridge for connecting with loved ones who have passed away, who have transitioned, who, have left the earthly plane. And so he can really help us connect through any form of grief in the moment that we're having with a loved one and anyone that we feel that we want to make peace or establish that connection of, in a loving way, of course. And so he is like this bridge of like the other side. And so he, just make it, this connection at the pace or the way that it works for you, the best way it works for you, how you want to connect with Archangel Metatron. All you have to do is just call him within your own heart and just feel through the energy of, his loving embrace around you, and let him do the work for you and trust that whole process and helping you in this grieving moment. So, those are the three keys to take away from processing grief at this time. And I do hope that it is very useful, but just know that to take it easy on yourself as well. If you find yourself with tons of grief, if you're dealing with a lot of it right now, I know it's not easy, especially when you're in the human form. Doesn't matter, how much we practice, what we practice in the spiritual side. And, we're still going to feel a lot of that grief and loss. But it is how we handle it as well and how we're able to deal with it in the moment and not dwell on it to the point that it will cause any health issues in us, because we are here also to be learning, to be expanding with others, and to be assisting in whatever way that is here on the surface of this earth. And just know that you're very much loved and your guides are always with you. The angels are always with you, and they're always there to provide the support that you need, that you desire when you ask, and they will come because they're already there with you. All right, I'm sending you love, and I will be connecting with you in another episode. Take care.